Vice President Vance outlined his expectations for upcoming talks with Iran as he touched down in Pakistan earlier today. Joining us now is former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations under President George W. Bush and CEO and founder of United Against Nuclear Iran, Mark Wallace. Great to have you with us this morning, Mark. So walk us through this. What are you anticipating over the next few days coming out of Pakistan? Well, first of all, thank you for having me and good morning. Look, I think Vice President Vance did a really solid job summarizing what we've come to call the Trump doctrine. Both President Trump and Vice President Vance have referenced the idea of extending a hand of diplomacy, a phrase that actually traces back to the Obama era, signaling that Washington is genuinely ready to strike a deal. The message is simple. Bring the elements of an agreement to the table and we'll negotiate in good faith. But here's what makes this moment genuinely different. For the first time in nearly 5 decades, President Trump is prepared to back that diplomatic outreach with a credible military option if Iran falls back on its familiar playbook of stalling, creating ambiguity, or simply refusing to show up. What's also worth noting is that the Iranian delegation that appears to have assembled for these negotiations looks somewhat uncertain, perhaps even internally divided. So who actually showed up from Tehran is telling in itself. Do you believe Iran fully understands that President Trump still has a military option firmly on the table? I think even if the Trump doctrine isn't labeled as such by name, all you have to do is look at the track record of this administration. President Trump has demonstrated in places like Venezuela and beyond that he means exactly what he says. He is absolutely willing to close a deal, but if you walk away from the table, he holds his position and makes clear that the United States will pursue its strategic objectives by force if necessary. Honestly, it reminds me quite a bit of President Reagan sitting across from Mikhail Gorbachev during the final chapters of the Soviet Union. I want to play a quick clip of President Trump laying out exactly what he wants from these negotiations. Take a look. What would a successful deal look like for you? No nuclear weapons. That's number one. Look, some might call that regime change in effect, but we've never framed it that way. No nuclear weapons, that covers about 99% of it. What about the Strait of Hormuz? Yes, that opens up automatically. The strait will open, because if we step back, they make no money otherwise. Other countries are stepping up too, and they'll contribute. But we won't need to use it. It's quite remarkable, isn't it? Despite all the efforts to muddy the waters around Trump's position, he has stayed remarkably consistent about what he's after in these negotiations. He really has. Across multiple settings, both in quick exchanges and longer format conversations, he's been clear. No nuclear weapons, no advanced ballistic missiles, no missiles capable of reaching the United States, restrictions on their drone program, rolling back their terrorist proxy networks, and frankly, ending the stranglehold on global commerce that the Strait of Hormuz has represented for nearly half a century. He's articulated each of those points at various moments and brought them together into a coherent framework. Iran's nuclear ambitions remain a direct threat not just to regional stability but to the security of the United States itself. Absolutely. You know the United Nations landscape well. Are you surprised by how many nations with enormous stakes in the Strait of Hormuz have essentially stepped aside and said, this isn't our fight? Honestly, not entirely. I remain a committed Atlanticist and a strong advocate for NATO, but watching how our European allies handled the Ukraine crisis while Iran was actively supplying Shahed drones targeting Ukrainian civilians, and yet some waited until January of this year to even formally designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization, that tells you something. Look, there is one nation on this planet with the full military capability to back up diplomacy at this level, and that's the United States. Our European partners should be standing alongside us in a coalition. They should be contributing more meaningfully, and hopefully the increased defense spending commitments are real, but at the very minimum, they need to be present at the table.